We're into part 2 of the murder of Michael Jackson, the cover-up and conspiracy. And I wanted to leave a lot of the spiritual stuff out of it, but we're at the point where we really can't do that because I need you to follow along with me as we go through the evidence, because some of the evidence that we're going to be presenting is from the Conrad Murray trial, and there were so many lies told during that trial from so many people. It has to be made crystal clear to you exactly what transpired. So I'm going to start with some of the information that I received from Spirit that allowed me to go back through the evidence to find out what the truth was. And all of the evidence is there, but you got to know what you're looking for, right? So I'm going to start with what Michael gave me in 2011, and a lot of this is in the book, and I'm not going to read all of it. And just so you know, there's a ton more evidence besides what I'm giving you in the prior video and in this video and even in the third video regarding the cover-up that I'm not including because it would be literally days of video. Every time I go through what I've been given, I find more information and I find more evidence, and it's just all over the place. So we're going to start with the 2011 information that Michael gave me, and he started with, I was prepared to do the tour. I was giving it all my all. They hired Murray to be my personal physician for the tour. They said they were afraid I couldn't handle it. Randy Phillips. When I went to the house, I was met with a slew of them, everyone from Phillips, DeLeo to Kenny Ortega. Conrad Murray told them he'd take care of me, except he didn't. Pretty soon, I feel like I'm out of it.
Was a meeting held at the Carrollwood address that you attended?
Yes.
Okay. And had that meeting been previously scheduled?
It was scheduled that day.
Okay. That day meaning Saturday, June 20th?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you become aware of this meeting?
My assistant told me that we'd received a call asking me to be at the house.
Okay. And did you go to Michael's house at Carrollwood?
I did.
Do you recall what time of day it was?
I would say late morning or early afternoon.
And knowing that you had sent this email the night before, or actually that same day, did you know that the meeting was going to center on these concerns, or did you speculate, or what?
The meeting wasn't broken down to me. I assumed that it would be about Michael.
Okay. And when you arrived at 100 North Carrollwood, who was there?
As I best recollect, it was Randy Phillips, Frank DeLeo, Dr. Murray, and Michael.
And he also said he'd given me propofol to sleep the night before. I was worried because I had these feelings about being murdered, and that was one of the things he told me before he died. He thought someone was trying to kill him, but he didn't know who. And then soon after that, after he passed, he told me someone gave him a shot. Everything went black, but that he didn't kill himself. But there was no strangulation, no knife, only a wish for him to go away. Sony wanted the rights to my catalog. It was all over the day I signed the contract. From that day forward, everything changed. The propofol was increased, and they took control of my life. Now, we kind of just had that right in the first video, the amounts of propofol that were ordered by Conrad Murray on his date of the contract as of May 1st, when he started administering propofol. He said Randy Phillips and Kenny Ortega were his go-to men. He told Kenny how he was feeling, and Kenny became concerned. Again, that's in testimony in the Conrad Murray trial. We'll see that a little bit later as well. He said, before I knew it, I was drugged out of my mind. Murray walked out of the room and into the hall. The next thing I knew, they entered the room again. He gave me a shot and said, this will put you to sleep, but it didn't. I was still awake. Now, that testimony is in Conrad Murray's statement to the LA Police Department. He said he gave him a shot of propofol. He tried to get to sleep all that night, and he was still awake. And he said, a man put a needle in my arm, an IV drip in my leg. My arm was sore from pins and needles in my shoulder. I couldn't see. A brown-haired guy, they were going through my papers. I could hear them. They ransacked the house. There was a security camera. It was pointed at the gate, but that night something wasn't right. My life was turning upside down, and I didn't know why. I was out of my body, but not dead. And he said he gave me the last shot, and I died instantly. The man with the brown hair, short-sleeved shirt, wide open, collar, white. He wrote down the time, Conrad Murray. It was significant. He had a pad of paper with him, taking notes. He said he carried it with him wherever he went, black with leather trim. Frank was separate from this guy. They drove in separate vehicles. Sony equals Mottola set AEG up to claim rights. In return, they would get profits from my estate. Look for a contract between AEG and Sony. Executors of the will, Brock and McLean. They have a stake in Sony. They wanted control out of the money from the This Is It tour concerts.
100 hours of the most intimate HD footage of every audition, every rehearsal, everything. Okay, Michael really let the cameras come in. He felt comfortable. We were all family. In a way, he's not always that comfortable public. So we have that in HD. We have almost pretty much a full performance, you know, dress rehearsal, and we have enough material for 2 live albums, which is never put out. So we have all that material. How we're going to exploit it and use it for the estate, the benefit, our benefit slightly, and the estate's benefit, we haven't figured out. No one's really even, you know, the obvious things. Put out live CDs. Put out that. We haven't really figured that out yet.
To the Beatles' music, is that still part of Michael's estate?
Absolutely.
And in terms of the sheer number crunching here, could you tell me now what he paid for it and what it might now be worth?
Well, we bought the catalog in 1985. We spent $47.5 million, which is well known. We sold off a background music library, so his net investment was about $41 million. And while I can't give out confidential details, it's been reported that Sony ATV is worth upwards of $2 billion, and Michael owns half.
Wow. So he took it from 40-odd million to $1 billion.
Yes, and I would say in addition to Sony ATV, Michael has his own publishing company, which is called MyJack, which owns all of his own songs as well as many other songs we bought over the years. So when you add the 2 companies together, it's even more valuable.
So all this stuff about Michael being $500 million in debt when he died is a load of baloney, isn't it? Presumably the publishing rights alone, by the sound of it, were worth several $1 billion.
Well, Piers, I'd like to comment on the speculation about Michael's debt. Net worth, you know, one doesn't want to have to sell those assets. So, you know, those are cornerstone assets that we plan on keeping for Michael's children and keeping those in the family.
What kind of decisions have you taken which have turned out to be very smart ones in relation to handling his estate?
Well, my co-executor, John McLean, and I mean, let's face it, Pierce, we're fortunate to represent Michael Jackson, which makes our job an easy one in some senses. But I think the first thing we did is we made a decision to greenlight This Is It, the motion picture. And I will say at the time we were criticized. People, you know, some family members said Michael wouldn't want these rehearsal tapes out there. But John and I felt that you really saw Michael as a great artist and a great humanitarian. That was our first big decision. And it went on to become the biggest documentary and the biggest concert film of all time. And I think we converted even new followers for Michael.
When I interviewed Jermaine Jackson recently, he said that there were lots of outtakes from that film, which if people saw those, they would be concerned about Michael's fragility, his fragile condition. What would you say to that?
I'm not sure if that's true or not. Kenny Ortega, who is a great director, went through all of the footage to assemble it together. And, you know, I think with any artist, they have their great days and they have off days. That's the nature of rehearsal. So I have not seen all the outtakes, but I'm pretty confident that what you see on the screen represented the true Michael.
Now, when I wrote this, it was really hard for me to believe. You don't want to think that that's big conspiracies going on, but some of this evidence we've already seen, and then the rest of it we're going to see. Now, there's a couple notes that I took from Frank DeLeo. He passed in 2011, and I jot things down as I get information from Spirit. And Frank was the one that informed me that there was an intent to commit fraud with the insurance company, that security was paid by AEG Live, which we already saw in the previous video, and there was a contract between him and AEG Live. He said in the event of his death, he'd receive half. And those are my notes on November 13th, 2011. And on February 19th, 2014, when I was still trying to find out the truth about this, Elizabeth Taylor said Frank DeLeo gave Michael a shot, and Tommy was on a Lloyd's insurance policy for fraud and named on the insurance, on the on LLC. Well, see, I find more information. Tommy on Lloyd's insurance, fraud on LLC, named on insurance. So Tommy's obviously on that LLC. I think we kind of touched on that. So that was on February. And then we get to some of the visions, because Spirit can tell me things, but if I can't track it or can't see it, I mean, it's a different experience. But when you see things, you see them more clearly, and they're more almost believable. You know, when you hear things, sometimes you doubt it. I doubted what Michael told me at first, you know, until you really follow up with the evidence. So there were a couple of visions that we have to explain, because as we go through the evidence, you're going to see the evidence that will depict what the visions portrayed. And the first one was with Randy Phillips in Michael's bedroom. Now, this vision that I had, it wasn't like, you know, I saw it in the middle of the day or something. It was when I was waking up, and I actually experienced this as if it was myself, and I'll explain it as best as I can remember. But I was just waking up in the morning, and I felt like I was Michael, and I was laying on a bed, and my breathing was really shallow, and I couldn't see. It felt like I had Vaseline over my eyes, and the vision, my vision was really blurry, but I could see three people walking around at the foot of my bed, or his bed, I would say. And one person that I knew was Randy Phillips was at the foot of the bed to the left, and it looked like he was going through a briefcase, and the briefcase was like on a dresser, is what I'm assuming. It was on a table or a dresser across from the foot of the bed. And then there were two other people in the room as well that I couldn't see clearly. There was one next to him, again going through papers, and then one that seemed to be going in and out of the room. So that was kind of strange. At the time, I didn't know really what was going on, but maybe there's paperwork that's missing from there. So the second vision was actually a vision. It wasn't as if I was him. I saw Michael on the bed again, but Frank DeLeo was in the room, and Frank DeLeo was supposedly brought in as his manager, but Michael said he never hired him as his manager. It was kind of done for him, and we're going to continue with that evidence today as well. You'll see that he wasn't. But he was yelling at Michael for screwing everything up, that they were canceling the shows. Michael was crying, and I'm going to try and leave a lot of those details out because I don't want to get emotional about it. But then he sat in a chair that was next to the bed, and we'll see photos of the room so you can actually see that. And then he inserted a needle into this like vial thing at Michael's leg, and we'll see that in autopsy and also in testimony. You'll see the IV that was hooked to his leg, where they actually administered propofol. Now, the last vision that I waited for, I didn't get till this past year, and it was a vision that was shown to me, and it wasn't as if I was Michael. It wasn't as if I was looking at it. It was like I was a third party viewing from the side of the room, where I actually saw Tommy walk into the room to the side of the bed to Michael and actually administer. He tied a rubber hose around Michael's arm and then administered a shot into his arm. And just to provide details a little bit, because what's different about this is Michael wasn't hooked up to a ventilator. He didn't turn his head to look at him. He was just laying there. It was very quiet and silent. So those are the visions. So as we continue through the evidence, we're going to continue on through the timeline. And we left off around June 2nd. And this starts right off with Frank DeLeo not being hired as Michael's manager. So in the previous video, we told you that Frank DeLeo released a statement that he was Michael's manager. This was back in May, I believe. And on June 2nd of that year, 2009, Randy Phillips released an email. He said, "Getting MJ to focus is not the easiest thing in the world, and we still have no lawyer, no business manager, or even a real manager in place. It's a nightmare." So obviously Frank DeLeo wasn't his manager, otherwise he might have referenced that. On June 11th, 2009, the ephedrine diet pills arrived, and you can see that evidence in the photo of Michael, what those diet pills actually did. And on June 14th, 2009, Paul Gangaware emails, "Frank and I have already discussed it and have requested a face-to-face with the doctor on Monday. We want to remind him that it's AEG, not MJ, who is paying his salary. We want him to understand what is expected of him. He's been dodging Frank so far." And I have a copy of that email that you can see. And that was in regards to some complaints. On the 14th of June, Kenny Ortega wrote an email to Paul Gangaware regarding Michael's health. The doctor didn't permit him to attend rehearsals today. Are you, Randy, and Frank aware of this? On June 15th, 2009, Conrad Murray writes a letter to cease the practice of medicine. On June 16th, 2009, there's an email from Paul Gangaware of AEG Live to Bob Taylor, who is the insurance broker, explaining that the doctor will be there in London to answer any questions. Now, this whole thing is revolving for AEG around the insurance policy. As Frank DeLeo stated, they wanted to commit fraud, and we started to see that a little bit in that first video, but the cancellation insurance would not go into effect until a second medical was done when they actually got to London. Now, in the first video, we saw that they weren't planning even to go to London. Conrad Murray wasn't budgeted to go anywhere past 2 months of his employment, which would have ended on July 1st. And they also changed the budget changes without cancellation insurance due to Dr. Tommy's departure. So on the 17th of June, John Branca comes into the picture, and he says that he met Michael at the forum and rehired him. John Branca stated that Frank brought him in, but other press statements from Randy Phillips of AEG state he was brought in due to a conflict of interest with their own attorney, Katz, who is also on the Sony board, and that a court might void AEG's contracts. And so they brought Branca in to apparently not void the AEG contract.
In terms of coming back into Michael's life, we separated amicably in 2006. And I got a call from Michael's manager, Frank DeLeo, about a month before we met. And Michael was excited and Frank was excited about the tour. And they wanted me to give some thought about some ideas of what we could do around the tour. Frank DeLeo and I met several times, and then finally I met again with Michael about a week before he passed away. We met at the Forum where he was rehearsing.
And I'm back now with John Branca, co-executive of Michael Jackson's estate, and Howard Weissman, Jackson's attorney. Howard, let me just bring you in here. Obviously, fascinating conversation there with John. People didn't really understand, I don't think, just what a business empire Michael Jackson had amassed by the end. In all your experience of working in the entertainment industry, how did Michael's business empire rank?
Michael truly was one of a kind. There are very few legitimate icons in the entertainment business. A lot of people try to get to that level or are looked at in different ways, but Michael was really one of a kind. He had the ability to generate millions and millions of fans worldwide that converted to huge numbers, and we see that, unfortunately, post-death as well as when he was alive. Yeah, he was an extraordinary individual.
Is it right to say, I don't want to be morbid about this, but is it right to say that there's an old sort of joke about this, that when entertainers die, that it's often their best career move because billions and billions of their records get sold and so on. But there is a certain truth to that, isn't there? That if you look at Elvis or John Lennon and Freddie Mercury and so on, that their death can spark huge, huge sums of money coming into an estate.
Yeah, I think that's true. The catalog sales spiked for a while. What differentiates Michael from others, in my opinion, the This Is It record, or the This Is It film, for example, the This Is It CD, now the Cirque shows, he was able to create additional businesses well beyond the music, and that's unusual.
John, let me ask you, I mean, Michael was well known to be pretty profligate with his spending. How big a problem was that for him by then? I don't want you to get into the precise details of what debt he may or may not have had, but was his spending out of control, as people kept saying it was?
Well, that was an area that was handled by Michael's business managers and accountants. And Michael made a lot of money, and I probably believe it's true that he spent a lot of money, but he left a lot behind. He had a lot to show for it.
Also on the 17th, there was an email from Bugsy that he's watched him deteriorate in front of his eyes over the last 8 weeks in regards to Michael Jackson. Bugsy was part of the This Is It show concert series. They were rehearsing with this Bugsy, and he had said that he watched him deteriorate over the last 8 weeks in front of his eyes. He was unable to do multiple 360 spins back in April. He'd fall on his ass if he tried now. So if we go 8 weeks back from this date of 6/17, that puts us just about where Conrad Murray's hire date was of May 1st. So June 17th back to about May 1st was about 8 weeks back to the date of Conrad Murray's hire. On the 18th, Randy Phillips drives to Michael's residence and orders MJ to stop seeing any doctor but Conrad Murray, which again shows evidence of intent to make sure that he is controlled by Dr. Murray and Dr. Murray is controlled by him. On June 19th, Michael is sent home from rehearsals by Kenny Ortega, and Kenny was one of the production managers who was working with Michael for the This Is It tours. He had to feed Michael and wrap him in blankets, and there were 4 security guards outside his door. No one offered him a cup of hot tea, and Kenny stated Michael would be shattered if they pulled the plug.
Michael Jackson's choreographer and friend Ken Ortega very concerned about Michael Jackson's health. This is June 19th. He's going to read that email now. Our continuing coverage of the Conrad Murray trial right here on HLN.
Randy, I will do whatever I can to be of help with the situation. If you need me to come to the house, just give me a call in the morning.
Ken Ortega, the first witness, now testifying about Dr. Murray and his interaction with Dr. Murray at the time that he was very concerned about the health of Michael Jackson. Let's listen in.
Yes.
Okay. And you also indicate that have played the tough love, now or never card. Had you played the tough love, now or never card?
No.
What was that referencing?
I believe that there was a meeting that was held, without my presence, that was about informing Michael that, unless he started to show up at rehearsals, that it was very possible we weren't going to be able to make the goals of the show.
And the goals of the show being what?
Being able to open, in London at the O2.
You also state in this email, quote, tonight I was feeding him, wrapping him in blankets to warm his chills, massaging his feet to calm him, and calling his doctor. Again, calling his doctor, is that Conrad Murray?
Yes, sir.
Were you able to reach him that evening?
No, sir.
Finally, it's important for everyone to know, I believe that he really wants this. It would shatter him, break his heart if we pulled the plug. He's terribly frightened. It's all going to go away. When you're referencing, I believe he really wants this, what are you referencing?
That always Michael would talk about how important this was and how we were going to accomplish this, and always just was very positive and optimistic.
Okay, but what is the he really wants this? What is the this?
The show.
Okay, the tour?
The show. The tour.
Okay. And so when you go on to say it would shatter him, break his heart if we pulled the plug, you're referencing pulling the plug on the tour?
Yeah.
That's yes?
Yes.
On June 19th, again, there was an email from the production manager. He said that Michael was a basket case, doubt is pervasive. Kenny Ortega was warming Michael with blankets. He was cold. He had the chills. He left rehearsals early. On June 20th, and this is where it gets really interesting, the 20th through the 25th, Randy Phillips emailed to Michael Caine, he may unfortunately be an anticipatory breach at this point. And this was regarding Michael's contract and advancement of any money to the Michael Jackson management to pay the staff. So he's basically telling him he can't give them any money because Michael might be in breach of his contract for some reason. Maybe because he's sick, I'm not sure, and they don't have cancellation insurance. That might be the reason. And Michael Caine is the attorney who's still serving on the Michael Jackson estate, actually, Frank DeLeo. Caine is with the estate and Sony. On 6/20/09, Frank DeLeo leaves a voicemail. This is according to the Conrad Murray trial testimony, that Michael is sick and needs a blood test. We got to see what he's doing, he said. Again, on 6/20/2009, Conrad Murray calls Randy Phillips as evidence on Conrad Murray's phone records. States this was stated in the AED trial. The call lasted 3 minutes, Phillips said. The records show the call was for 25 minutes between Conrad Murray and Randy Phillips. On 6/20, still, and we're going to start entering times now because this gets detailed. At 1:20 in the afternoon, there was an email from Kenny Ortega to Randy Phillips regarding MJ's health. 6:20 again, 1:48 in the afternoon. Phillips emails to Kenny, don't play an amateur doctor. He's not a psychologist. Basically, mind your own business. We've got the situation under control. Then at 20:39, so that would be what, 8:30 in the evening, again on June 20th. There's an email from Randy Phillips saying that they had a very productive, solid meeting with Kenny, Dr. Murray, MJ, and myself. Kenny's hysteria will be in check. So this is the meeting I actually was just talking about, that Michael was talking about. And basically, he's letting everyone know that everything's under control, under their control. And he didn't want anyone concerned about Michael's health. So we're still at June 20th, and then at 21:10, which would be 9:10 in the evening, there's an email from John Branca to Randy Phillips, Michael King, Paul Gongaware, Tim Lewicki, Katz, and DeLeo. And that email has said that Michael should not sign anything that is not reviewed by Joel, meaning Joel Katz, the attorney, and me. Now, if Randy Phillips' statement about Katz being in a conflict of interest that he made to the press, I'm not sure why he'd still be on this email. Again, on 6/20, that was the meeting date at Michael's home where they were scolding Kenny Ortega, and there's some video testimony from Kenny about that meeting.
That would actually be the same day, Saturday, June 20th, since it was written at 2:04 in the morning. Was a meeting held at the Carrollwood address that you attended?
Yes.
Okay. And had that meeting been previously scheduled?
It was scheduled that day.
Okay. That day meaning Saturday, June 20th?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you become aware of this meeting?
My assistant told me that we'd received a call asking me to be at the house.
Okay. And did you go to Michael's house at Carrollwood?
I did.
Do you recall what time of day it was?
I would say late morning or early afternoon.
And knowing that you had sent this email the night before, or actually that same day, did you know that the meeting was going to center on these concerns, or did you speculate, or what?
The meeting wasn't broken down to me. I assumed that it would be about Michael.
Okay. And when you arrived at 100 North Carrollwood, who was there?
As I best recollect, it was Randy Phillips, Frank DeLeo, Dr. Murray, and Michael.
And when you first then came into this meeting, did you soon learn what the topic was?
Yes.
Okay. And were you confronted by someone?
Yes.
By whom?
Dr. Murray.
And what was the topic, or what was expressed to you by Conrad Murray at this meeting?
He was upset that I didn't allow Michael to rehearse the night before and that I sent him home. And he was upset that he said I should stop trying to be an amateur doctor and psychologist and be the director and allow Michael's health to him.
Again, on 6/20, there's another email from Randy Phillips regarding Conrad Murray, who he says he's gaining immense respect for. And this was after Conrad Murray had told Kenny Ortega that he's not the doctor, don't play amateur doctor, and not to worry. And we're still at 6:20. Randy Phillips emails Lewicki of AEG Live from his personal email, copying DeLeo, forwarding a trouble at the front email from Ortega, and that's what started all of this, the meeting that they had with Kenny Ortega at Michael's house. And then we find out in the Kai Chase testimony, Kai Chase was the chef for Michael Jackson at the Carrollwood home, that the meeting that took place at that Carewood home, there was a vase broken and there was a lot of yelling.
More powerful testimony in the Michael Jackson wrongful death trial as a member of pop star's staff talks about an angry confrontation in the Jackson home. Eyewitness News reporter Miriam Hernandez says it came after jurors saw part of a taped deposition from one of Jackson's children.
Michael Jackson was pressured to perform, according to the claim filed by his mother, Catherine. The suit blames his tour producers for allegedly making excessive demands on the singer and his doctor. For the first time, the jury is hearing about a confrontation at the Jackson home. AEG execs Jackson and Dr. Conrad Murray. Personal chef Kai Chase testified she served snacks at the meeting, did not hear the discussion, but did witness the fallout. Murray cursing as he stormed out, saying he didn't have to take it. A vase was broken, she said, though she couldn't say how. She testified that Jackson was wrapped in layers of clothes, and in her opinion, there was fear in his eyes. Chase testified that Jackson once told her that he was tired, that he said, "They are killing me. They're working me too hard." Question from the AEG defense, "Did you take that literally?" Jackson didn't die of exhaustion. He died from an overdose of the anesthetic propofol. Chase, "I just took it for what he said."
On 6/21, John Branca emails Randy Phillips that he's going out of town. Again, copied on this email were DeLeo, Katz, Randy Phillips, Paul Gongaware, and Tim Lewicki of AEG. On 6/21, Michael starts complaining that one side of his body is hot, one side is cold. On June 22nd, Karen Fay, who is the makeup artist, emails that she was concerned about Michael's health, that it's deteriorated since, again, May 1st, Conrad Murray started. His health has declined since May. That's the second one, second or third one. I don't know how many we're presenting, but I think it's the third one that we presented here. And then on 6/22/09, there's an insurance policy that's initialed into effect, naming Tommy as the additional insured. And this was the piece of evidence that I found that I was able to go back through all the testimony after receiving that final vision of Tommy actually administering the shot. When you find his name on an insurance policy that was hidden in the courts in the state of California, there's a big trail of information that turns up. So the insurance policy named Tommy as an additional insured. This part was not on a cancellation insurance. This was for accident only. In the Lloyd's suit, accident only meant an accident, like a loss of life, something like that. Now Lloyd's contended that it was not covered because Michael's death was not an accident. It was ruled a homicide, and homicide is murder. It's an intentional act, and so that's one of the reasons why all of that insurance settlements were kept under wraps, because Lloyd's again knew that they were being fraudulent with the insurance. Tommy was named on the policy just 3 days before, and then they tried to collect on it as death insurance instead of cancellation insurance. And again, that testimony was in the previous video where they actually rebudgeted for cancellation insurance. June 22nd, 2009, there was also an email from Karen Fay, who is the makeup artist, that Michael couldn't walk down the ramp of the set without assistance. And then on June 24th, and we're getting down to the wire here, Conrad Murray signs the AEG contract and faxes it to AEG. And this is after a series of emails from Conrad Murray to the people at AEG saying that he started his services, he wants his money transferred, and they kind of gave him the runaround to give him any. On 6/25, and this is the day that Michael passed, at 5:54 in the morning, an email comes from Bob Taylor, who was with the Lloyd's Insurance Group, to Conrad Murray, and copied to Randy Phillips, Paul, and Tim. And that would be Paul Gongaware and Tim Woolley of AEG Live. The forward is the M. Jones Insurance Company, and it states they won't issue illness cancellation insurance until full medical records and physical is done in London. 6:25 at 9:22 in the morning. This is when Conrad Murray's storage unit is visited by two of Conrad Murray's employees. According to TMZ, 2 to 5 boxes were removed from the storage unit that day. June 25th, we're still at 9:45 in the morning. Kai Chase, the personal chef, states she left the home leaving granola to soak in almond milk in the fridge for Michael to go to the market. She left the home. At 10:15 in the morning, security guard Alberto Alvarez says that he arrived at the home at that time, and this is according to his testimony in the Conrad Murray trial. But we'll see a little bit more about Alberto in a few minutes. On 10:20, there was a conference call that was referenced on Conrad Murray's phone records, and we're going to see a little something about the phone records. Then on 10:30, Randy Phillips states he received a call from Frank DeLeo. 10:30 in the morning, we're going to see that evidence here on video through Randy Phillips' testimony in the Conrad Murray trial. Michael is having trouble breathing.
I want to take you to the 25th of June, 2009 at the hospital. When did you first learn that Michael Jackson was taken to the hospital?
I received a phone call from Frank DeLeo. I think it was approximately 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning, that Michael was having trouble breathing. There were paramedics at the house. Where was I? I was in Westwood. He said, "You're closer to the house than me. Can you get up there right away?" I'm still at the Beverly Hilton Hotel.
All right, and what time was this?
I believe, to the best of my recollection, it was somewhere around 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning.
Guess he knew. And then at 10:30, Kaiche says that she, returns to the house. She says everything was normal. And then also at 10:30, Randy Phillips stated on Sky TV, we're going to go to video for this as well, that he got a call from Frank DeLeo, who was serving as manager, and that there's something wrong, and that we, quote unquote, called the paramedics, and he's not breathing.
That you have to get to the house from Frank DeLeo, who's serving as his manager. And Frank DeLeo called me and said, "I can't get there first. You got to get there. You're closer. There's something wrong." They called the paramedics, and he's not breathing.
He's not breathing. I'm not sure how they would know he's not breathing. I don't know who we is, but we're going to go to video. And again, I want you to remember what I told you in the beginning of those visions. He also says he was with an associate of his. You're going to see his associate was Tommy.
An associate of mine, and zoomed up to the house. And as I was approaching the house that we were renting for Michael in Holmby Hills, which is part of Beverly Hills, okay, the ambulance was just coming out of the gates with the 2 Escalades that are Michael's private security detail, and his children were behind the ambulance. So I just U-turned around and got behind them.
Now, on 10:30 again, when he was cross-examined, Randy Phillips stated that it took him 15 minutes to get to the house, where he saw the ambulance leaving and then followed the ambulance to UCLA Hospital. At 10:34, apparently there was a call to Conrad Murray from his assistant. And at 10:40, Conrad Murray states that he administered propofol. He claims Michael fell asleep, so he left comfortable leaving the room at 10:40 in the morning. 11 o'clock, Frank DeLeo stated in his interview with CNN that about 11 o'clock, he just turned around and headed to the hospital. He stated he got to the hospital and the ambulance had left already. He called Randy Phillips, who stated that they were going to UCLA, not Cedars, even though Randy Phillips apparently didn't speak with the paramedics. So basically, Frank says that he got a call from one of Michael's fans that there's an ambulance at the house, and this was at 11:30, he said, and lunch just arrived. He was at the Beverly Hills hotel having lunch, and we're going to see what that actually means
I was
in a
at the
little
Beverly
while.
Hilton Hotel. I was having lunch. It was an early lunch, but it was 11:30. And I got a call from a fan. They just served us lunch. I was with a friend. And the fan said, "Do you know there's an ambulance in front of Michael's house?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, you know, there's an ambulance there." I said, "Okay, let me get off. I'm going to call Michael's assistant." I called Brother Michael. I said, "Is there an ambulance in front of the house?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm going from my apartment to the house. There seems to be a problem." I said, "Okay." He said, "But the doctor's with him." I said, "All right, I'm on my way to the house." I had to go to my room, get my car ticket, and I had shorts on. I wanted to put a pair of pants on. As I'm walking, I called Randy Phillips. I said, "Randy, I don't know what's going on, but there's an ambulance at Michael's house. I know you live in Beverly Hills. Go there right now. I'm on my way, but I want you can get there quicker than me." And I hung up. He was at the cleaners. He went right to Michael's house. I got my car, came out. Now, Michael lives up here in Collingwood or whatever it's called. I was driven to his house on many occasions. He would send somebody to pick me up. Sometimes I would follow somebody, and I know how to get back. I might have driven there twice on my own. I made the wrong turn.
All those streets there look alike.
They all look alike. So I came from the back. So it took me maybe an extra minute, to find it. Instead of going the right way, I was like a street off. So I got to there, and the gates were wide open, and the guards were out there, and I said, "Well, where's the ambulance?" And they said they took Michael to the hospital. So I didn't know which hospital. In my mind, I thought it was Cedars-Sinai. I said, "Well, I better call Randy." So I called Randy, and I said, "Did you get to the house?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm following the ambulance." I said, "Where are we going, to Cedars?" He said, "No, we're going to UCLA.
He was having lunch, and he got a call around 11:30, and an ambulance just arrived at the home. Now, if we look back at the records, apparently 911 wasn't called until 12:22. So both Randy Phillips is at 10:30. He states Michael has trouble breathing. 11:30, Frank's at lunch. He says he got a call from a fan, and 911 wasn't called till 12:22. Now, at 11:17 that same morning, Conrad Murray emailed the insurance company, and he says that authorization is denied for cancellation insurance. So basically, they wanted Michael's medical records to make sure that they could set up cancellation insurance for the shows that were going to London. But Conrad Murray says authorization is denied, so they don't want cancellation insurance apparently. Now this is from cancellation insurance through the budget changes. This is through the budget changes for Conrad Murray's salary. And now again we have another email from Conrad Murray himself that says he's denying any information for cancellation insurance. Again, this is on June 25th, just prior to Michael's death. At 11:45, Fahim Mohammed, another security guard, says he arrives for work. And then at 11:50, we'll see Brian Oxman here on video states to CBS News that he just got a call a little bit before noon. He got a call a little bit before noon from Randy's assistant. This is Randy Phillips' assistant. That Michael was taken.
Brian Oxman is an attorney for the Jackson family. He joins us from the UCLA Medical Center, where he spent a good portion of this day. Good evening, sir.
Hello, Harry. How are you? It is a very sad day for me here. I am heartbroken.
What was it like to be with members of Michael's family today?
I got a call just a little bit before noon that Michael had been taken from the hospital by Randy's assistant, who gave me that call. And I then came over here, talked to Randy. I said, Randy, what's happened? He says, I don't know, Brian, I'll meet you at the medical center. We got here, and when I saw him, we just hugged Harry.
So here again, Randy Phillips states he's 10:30, he's at the cleaners. He got a call from Frank DeLeo. He said that there's an ambulance at the house. Frank DeLeo says he's at lunch at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And a fan calls him, and that's how he finds out about it. But the ambulance isn't called till 12:22. But Brian OXMAN gets a call from Randy Phillips' assistant at 11:50 that Michael was taken to the hospital. So it's all a little premature here before the 12:22 call. So either they're completely psychic and they were in a different time zone, or they were there that morning. At 11:51, you'll see Conrad Murray's girlfriend. She is on the phone with Conrad Murray that morning, and she hears a mumbling of voices in the
Responsible
background.
for Michael Jackson's death, showed he was busy making phone calls and sending text messages instead of monitoring his star patient's IV. They paraded out a small harem of women in Dr. Murray's life. Michelle Bella, a dancer at a Las Vegas club who met Murray in 2008, told the jury she was contacted by the doctor in the hours before Jackson died.
Did Conrad Murray send you a text on June 25th of 2009?
Yes.
And this woman, Sade Anding, Murray's former girlfriend, who prosecutors say was on the phone with Murray the moment he realized Jackson had stopped breathing.
I said hello, hello, and I didn't hear anything. And that's when I pressed the phone against my ear, and I heard mumbling of voices. It sounded like the phone was maybe in his pocket or something. It was shh, and I heard coughing.
Now, at 12 o'clock that day, Conrad Murray stated that he found Michael not breathing at this time. So at 12 o'clock also, Fahim Muhammad, a security guard, says he leaves the property to go to the bank. At 12:05, Kai Chase testified in the Conrad Murray trial that Conrad Murray came down the stairs in a frantic and shouted, "Get help, get Prince, get security." At 12:13, Conrad Murray leaves a message for Michael Amir. Now, Michael Amir was a head of security for Michael Jackson. He was also, if you remember in the first video, employed by AEG Live. He was being paid by them, as well as Dr. Tome Tome. And the message that he left for Michael Amir took the pains to actually videotape and record that voicemail message. But you should know he also took the pains of erasing every other voicemail that he had on his phone except for Murray's message. Now, these three security guards, Fahim Muhammad, Alberto Alvarez, and Amir, all had the same attorney representing them at the Conrad Murray trial. And you might want to think about why when we get through this a little bit more. Michael Amir testified that he spoke with Dr. Murray, and he tells them to get someone up there right away. And this was at 12:15, again on June 25th. At 12:16, on the Conrad Murray trial, the prosecutors in the state of California, David Walgren, showed a chart of phone records from Fahim Muhammad indicating a call from Michael Amir asking him to go upstairs. That lasted for 29 seconds. Now, the chart that they showed is a chart. It's not actual phone records. And you'll see in the testimony here, he stops and David Walgren, the prosecuting attorney, says, let's stop and change that to AM to PM on the chart of the
phone call. You received actually, let me make a correction here. One moment, Your Honor. Sure. I changed the AM to PM. Let me show you this again.
You need to re-ask?
I need to be re-asked because this information identifies another party's call records outside of AT&T.
12:18, Alberto Alvarez and Michael Lemire speak. He says he's at the security trailer and he's instructed to go to the front door. And there's two doors in the home. There's a front door and there's a side door by the kitchen. The security trailer is next to the side door by the kitchen. But he says he speaks with him and he's instructed to go to the front door. So he's going to walk past the door by the kitchen and go to the front door because it's usually open. Okay, so Fahim calls Derek Cleveland to go upstairs according to his testimony, but they said that he never got a hold of him. And then at 12:20 in the Conrad Murray trial, there was the 911 call that was placed by Alberto Alvarez. Now, Exhibit 462 in the Conrad Murray trial, and we're going to show you that, shows the 911 call was made from the address of 9641 Sunset Boulevard. That's 9641 Sunset Boulevard. And if you look up that address, that's the Beverly Hills Hotel where Frank was having lunch.
I was at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. I was having lunch.
I received a phone call from Frank DeLeo. I think it was approximately 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning. That Michael was having trouble breathing. There were paramedics at the house. Where was I? I was in Westwood. He said, "You're closer to the house than me. Can you get up there right away?" I'm still at the Beverly Hilton Hotel.
In a black suit and soft-spoken, Prince described his father as a nurturer and teacher, but Prince appeared to choke up when questioned about the day his father died. He testified that the King of Pop was excited about the comeback tour, but in the weeks leading up to his death, he became really skinny, and his body temp would go up and down. Prince said his father would cry after phone calls, saying, quote, "They're going to kill me. They're going to kill me." According to Prince, he was referring to AEG Live CEO Randy Phillips and his ex-manager, Dr. Tome. Prince testified that Phillips visited Jackson's home and aggressively spoke to Dr. Conrad Murray the night before his father's death. Prince said, quote, "He was grabbing by the back of his elbow, and they were really close, and he was making hand motions." AEG Live denies involvement in Jackson's death, saying Dr. Murray was not an employee of theirs.